Revenge is rarely served cold. Sometimes it's served on a bank check with 9 zeros. Meet Tom Miller. He walked into a lawyer's office thinking he was the smartest man in the room, eager to discard his boring wife Rose for a younger, flashier model. He bragged to his friends, flashed his new watch and celebrated his so-called upgrade, convinced Rose would crumble without him. But Tom was so blinded by his own ego that he missed the truth, hiding in plain sight. Rose wasn't just a struggling librarian. She was the secret sole heiress to a multi-billion-dollar empire. And just as Tom signed the papers to leave her with nothing, he unknowingly walked away from a fortune that could have bought his entire world. The ink on the settlement papers wasn't even dry before Tom huffed a laugh, checking his Rolex. It was a Submariner brand new, bought on credit he planned to pay off with his next quarterly bonus. I honestly thought this would take longer. Rose, Tom said, not looking at her. He was looking at the reflection of his own teeth in the conference room window of the law firm. I mean, usually women in your position, they claw, they beg. Rose sat across the mahogany table, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She was wearing that same beige cardigan she'd worn for the last 3 years. To Tom, she looked like part of the furniture, dull, reliable, and utterly invisible. "I just want it done, Tom," Rose said softly. Her voice didn't waver, which annoyed him. He wanted tears. He wanted a scene. He wanted proof that he was devastating to lose. "Right, done. Because you know you wouldn't win." Tom smirked, picking up the pen. He signed his name with a flourish, Thomas J. Miller. "My lawyer Caleb here crushed you on the alimony. I hope you're ready for a smaller apartment. Maybe something in Queens or back in Ohio with your parents." Rose didn't look at Caleb, the shark-like attorney Tom had hired for $800 an hour. She just looked at Tom. There was no sadness in her eyes, just a strange, glassy patience, like someone waiting for a bus. "I'll manage," she said. Manage. Tom scoffed, standing up and buttoning his suit jacket. It was Italian wool. He felt like a king. "Rose, let's be real. You're 34. You're a junior archivist at a city library. You make, what, $45,000 a year. You're losing a guy who just made VP of regional sales. You're not managing. You're plummeting." He walked around the table, leaning in close to her ear. "But hey, Jessica sends her regards. She wanted to know if you wanted the old espresso machine. We're getting a Breville." Rose finally looked up. For a second, Tom thought he saw a flicker of something sharp in her eyes, amusement, pity. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "Keep it," Rose said. "I don't drink coffee anymore." Tom laughed, shaking his head, as he walked out of the office, Caleb trailing behind him like a loyal dog. "Cold," Caleb muttered as they hit the elevator. "She didn't even ask for the car." "She knows her place," Tom said, checking his phone. He had 3 texts from Jessica. "Did you sign it? Are we free? Can we book the venue now?" "She's boring, Caleb. That was the problem." Tom continued typing a rapid reply. 5 years of marriage, and I felt like I was suffocating in beige. She never wanted to go to the galas. She never wanted to network. She just wanted to read her books and go for walks. I'm a rising star. I need someone who shines. He showed Caleb his phone screen. It was a photo of Jessica Blonde, 26, posing on a boat in Miami with a drink in her hand. "That," Tom said, tapping the glass, "is a wife. That is an asset." Later that night, Tom held court at the Avery, an upscale bar downtown where the cocktails cost $20 and the lighting was designed to make everyone look rich. He was surrounded by his boys, mostly guys from the sales floor who idolized his numbers. "So it's official?" Dave asked, raising a glass. Official, Tom announced, loosening his tie. I am a free man. And let me tell you, it was pathetic. She just sat there, didn't even try to fight for the pension. I think she was in shock. She realizes she's about to go from a dual-income household to eating ramen in a studio apartment. The table laughed. To the upgrade, someone shouted. To the upgrade, Tom roared, downing his scotch. He felt invincible. He had the job, he had the new hot fiancée, and he had successfully shed the dead weight of his past. He spent the next 2 hours recounting every flaw Rose had. How she hated spending money. How she drove a 2014 Honda Civic. How she refused to let him buy a boat because it was impractical. She had a poverty mindset, Tom declared, slurring slightly. That's the truth. Some people are just born to be average. They're afraid of success. Rose, she was afraid of me. Afraid of how big I was going to get. His phone buzzed. It was a notification from his bank. The final joint account had been closed. The transfer of his share was complete. He smiled. He was entirely unaware that at that exact moment across the city, Rose was sitting in her small apartment, staring at a document that had just been hand-delivered by a courier in a black suit. She wasn't crying over Tom. She wasn't thinking about the espresso machine. She was staring at a letterhead embossed with a crest that dated back to the Industrial Revolution. The name at the top read, The Sterling Family Trust, and the first line read, We regret to inform you of the passing of your grandfather, Arthur Sterling. As per the terms of the trust strictly confidential, until the dissolution of your marriage, the entirety of the estate is now yours. Tom Miller was bragging about saving $2,000 a month in alimony. He had no idea he had just walked away from a woman who had just inherited $4 billion. 2 months later, Tom's life was a whirlwind of expensive decisions. Jessica didn't like the poverty mindset either. In fact, Jessica seemed to have an allergy to saving money. Babe, we can't have lilies at the reception, Jessica whined, scrolling through Pinterest on her iPad. She was lounging on their new white leather sectional, which Tom was terrified of staining. Lilies are for funerals. We need orchids. White orchids. Imported. How much more is that? Tom asked, looking up from his laptop. He was trying to move some funds around. The wedding budget had started at $30,000. It was currently hovering around $85,000. Like $4,000. It's not a big deal, Tom. You're a VP. Jessica rolled her eyes. Don't be like her. That was the trump card. Don't be like Rose. Every time Tom hesitated to spend money, Jessica threw Rose's frugality in his face. And it worked. Tom's ego couldn't handle the comparison. Book the orchids, Tom grumbled. I'll put it on the Amex. He checked his social media. He had posted a photo of their engagement shoot yesterday, him in a tuxedo, Jessica in a gown with a slit up to her thigh. The caption read, Life is about leveling up. Never settle. It had 300 likes. He scrolled through the comments, soaking in the validation. King moves. She's gorgeous, bro. Upgrade of the century. Then he saw a comment from an old mutual friend, Greg. Saw Rose downtown today. She looks different. Tom frowned. Different, how did she look? Tired. Haggard. He clicked on Greg's profile to message him, but Jessica kicked his shin gently. Pay attention to me. We need to pick the DJ. Tom put the phone away, but the comment nagged at him. He wanted Rose to be miserable. He needed her to be miserable. It validated his choice. Meanwhile, Rose was indeed looking different. She was sitting in a boardroom on the 45th floor of the Sterling Tower. The view stretched all the way to the harbour. She wasn't wearing the beige cardigan. She was wearing a structured black blazer, made of silk, tailored to fit her perfectly. It didn't have a label. clothes at this level didn't need labels. Across from her sat a team of 7 lawyers and 3 financial advisors. The air in the room was heavy with the scent of old money and serious power. The portfolio is fully consolidated. Ms. Jenkins, the lead executor, a man named Mr. Thorne with silver hair and a voice like gravel, said. The media blackout held. As far as the public knows, Arthur Sterling's estate is being managed by the board. No one knows the sole beneficiary is his estranged granddaughter. Good, Rose said. Her voice was still quiet, but the hesitation was gone. And my name remains Jenkins for now, as you requested. If you switch to Sterling, the press will be on your lawn in an hour. Rose nodded, looking at the dossier in front of her. The numbers were staggering. Real estate in London, Tokyo, New York, a shipping fleet, tech holdings, and a liquid cash reserve that made Tom's quarterly bonus look like a rounding error on a tip. And the ex-husband? Thorne asked, his tone dropping a few degrees. Mr. Miller. Rose's face remained impassive. What about him? We've noticed some activity. Thorne slid a piece of paper across the table. He's leveraged himself quite heavily for this wedding. He's also boasting publicly about his financial acumen. Given that he signed a waiver of claim during your divorce, he has no legal standing. However, if he finds out about the inheritance time frame, he won't, Rose said, a small cold smile touching her lips. Tom only sees what he wants to see. He thinks I'm a mouse. He thinks I'm poor. Let's keep him comfortable in that belief. Very well. But there is one matter, Thorne said. The charity gala for the Children's Hospital next week. Your grandfather was the primary donor. You are expected to make an appearance to present the check. Rose hesitated. The gala was the biggest social event of the season. High society corporate climbers, old money. Tom will be there, Rose said. His company bought a table. He's been talking about it for months. He thinks it's his big break into the elite circle. You can send a proxy, Thorne suggested. Rose stood up, walking to the window. She looked down at the city where Tom was currently buying orchids. He couldn't afford to impress people who didn't care. No, Rose said, turning back to the room. I'll go. It might be awkward, Thorne warned. It won't be awkward for me, Rose said. I want to see it. I want to see him level up. The week leading up to the gala, Tom was insufferable. This is it, Jess, he said, pacing their living room, while Jessica applied a face mask. The Sterling Gala. Tickets are $5,000 a plate. My CEO is going to be there. This is where I network. I shake the right hands, I make a few jokes, and boom, I'm on the track for senior VP. What am I supposed to wear? Jessica mumbled through the clay mask. Something expensive, Tom said. We need to look like we belong. I don't want anyone thinking we're just middle management. He went to his closet and pulled out his tuxedo. He had rented it, but he told Jessica he bought it. He looked at himself in the mirror, practicing his smile. Charming. Successful. Rich. He thought about Rose for a fleeting moment. She would be at home right now, probably eating soup and watching a documentary. She would never understand this world. The thrill of the hunt. The lights. God, I dodged a bullet, he whispered to himself. On the night of the gala, the grand ballroom was dripping in gold and crystal. The elite of the city were there, senators, tech moguls, heirs and heiresses. Tom walked in with Jessica on his arm. She looked stunning in a red dress that was perhaps a little too loud for the room, but Tom loved the attention. He maneuvered through the crowd, sweating slightly. He managed to shake his CEO's hand. He laughed too loudly at a bad joke made by a board member. He was working the room, desperate to be accepted. Tom! He turned to see Greg, his friend from the bar. Greg looked pale. "Hey, Greg. Great party, huh?" Tom grinned. "Tom, have you seen the program?" Greg asked, clutching a velvet-bound booklet. "No, why? I'm looking for the open bar." "Tom, look at the main donor list," Greg hissed, shoving the booklet into Tom's chest. "Look who's presenting the Legacy Award." Tom frowned, opening the booklet. He scanned the list of corporate sponsors. Boring. Boring. Then he saw it. The Arthur Sterling Legacy Award, presented by the Sterling family representative. "So," Tom said, "some old rich guy died. Who cares? No, Tom, look at the stage." The lights in the ballroom dimmed. A spotlight hit the center stage. The chatter died down. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed, "please welcome the chairwoman of the Sterling Trust, Ms. Rose Jenkins." Tom froze. He felt the blood drain from his face, pooling in his shoes. He blinked, sure he was hallucinating. Walking out from the curtains wasn't the mousy woman in the beige cardigan. It was a woman in a floor-length gown of shimmering midnight blue, wearing diamonds around her neck that cost more than Tom's entire life earnings. Her hair was styled in sleek waves. She held herself with a regal grace that Tom had never seen. But it was her face. It was Rose. "No," Tom whispered. "That's impossible." "Is that your ex-wife?" Jessica asked, her voice shrill. "Why is she wearing a Harry Winston necklace?" Rose stepped to the microphone. She looked out over the crowd of 1,000 people. Her eyes swept the room, and for a terrifying second, Tom felt her gaze lock onto him. She didn't smile. She didn't flinch. She just looked through him like he was a ghost. "Good evening," Rose said, her voice amplified, clear and commanding. "My grandfather, Arthur Sterling, believed that true wealth is quiet." Tom couldn't hear the rest. His ears were ringing. Arthur Sterling, grandfather. "She's a Sterling," Tom choked out. She's a billionaire." He looked around the room. People were listening to her with rapt attention. His CEO was clapping. The board members were nodding. Rose was the most powerful person in the room. And he had divorced her 3 months ago because she was boring. "You told me she was a librarian," Jessica hissed, gripping his arm so hard her nails dug in. I thought she was—" Tom stammered. Rose finished her speech. The room erupted in applause, a standing ovation. Tom stood there paralyzed as Rose walked off stage, flanked by security guards. He had to get to her. He had to explain. It was a misunderstanding. They were friends, right? They had history. "I need to go to the bathroom," Tom said, pulling away from Jessica. He didn't go to the bathroom. He ran toward the backstage VIP entrance. He pushed past a waiter. He needed to talk to Rose. He needed to know if there was still a chance. But as he rounded the corner, a massive hand stopped him. A security guard built like a tank blocked his path. "Excuse me, I know her," Tom said, breathless. "I'm her husband, ex-husband, Tom Miller." The guard looked down at a clipboard, then back at Tom with a look of pure boredom. "Mr. Miller," the guard said, "Mrs. Jenkins gave us a specific list of people allowed backstage. I'm sure I'm on it," Tom said, flashing his sales smile, though his lip was trembling. "You're not," the guard said. "In fact, you're the only name on the do not admit list. She said if you tried to approach her, we should escort you out." "Escort me out?" Tom laughed nervously. "Come on, buddy. I just want to congratulate her." "Sir, you need to leave," the guard said, stepping forward. Tom looked past the guard. Through a crack in the curtains he saw Rose. She was laughing, holding a glass of champagne, talking to the governor. She looked radiant. She looked free. And she didn't look back. The silence in the Uber Black on the ride home from the gala was heavy enough to crush a lung. Tom sat staring out the window, watching the city lights blur into streaks of neon. Usually he loved this view. It made him feel like he owned the night. Tonight the city felt like a cage. Every skyscraper, every luxury car, every symbol of wealth he had spent his life chasing now felt like it was mocking him. Beside him, Jessica was vibrating with rage. She wasn't looking at him. She was scrolling through her phone, her acrylic nails tapping furiously against the glass screen. "Stop it!" Tom murmured, his voice hoarse. "Stop what?" Jessica snapped, turning to him. Her perfectly contoured face was twisted in a snarl. "Stop reading the news, because guess what, Tom? It's everywhere." Mystery heiress revealed. Rose Jenkins, granddaughter of Arthur Sterling, steps into the light. She shoved the phone in his face. The photo was high resolution, taken just an hour ago. Rose looked regal, unbothered, and infinitely out of their league. "You said she was a mouse," Jessica hissed. "You said she wore sweaters from Target and clipped coupons for laundry detergent. You said she was pathetic." "She was," Tom shouted, then winced as the driver made eye contact with him in the rearview mirror. He lowered his voice, gripping his knees. She was Jess. For 5 years she drove a Honda. She ate leftovers. She never mentioned a trust fund. She never mentioned a grandfather. How was I supposed to know? "You were her husband," Jessica screamed, ignoring the driver. "You slept in the same bed as a billionaire for 5 years, and you treated her like she was a burden. Do you know how stupid you look? Do you know how stupid I look?" Tom looked away. That was the crux of it. It wasn't just the money, though. The thought of the billions made his stomach churn with physical nausea. It was the humiliation. He had paraded Jessica around as the prize. He had paraded himself around as the winner. Now everyone knew the truth. He hadn't upgraded. He had discarded a diamond because he thought it was glass. When they got back to their apartment, a luxury 2-bedroom that cost nearly half of Tom's monthly take-home pay, the air felt stale. It smelled of the expensive reed diffuser Jessica had insisted on a scent that now just smelled like debt. Tom went straight to the liquor cabinet and poured himself a double whiskey. His hands were shaking. He sat on the white leather couch, loosened his tie, and opened his laptop. He needed to know. He needed to understand the mechanics of how he had been played. He typed Arthur Sterling into the search bar. The results were endless. Arthur Sterling, industrial tycoon. Net worth estimated at $4.2 billion. Sterling Trust, the silent giant behind global shipping and tech infrastructure. Tom read the obituary. Arthur had died 3 months ago. The timeline clicked into place with a sickening snap. 3 months ago, Tom whispered to the empty room. Jessica had slammed the bedroom door shut an hour ago. That was the week I asked for the divorce. He scrolled further. He found a legal blog discussing the Sterling estate. The Sterling Trust is notorious for its character clause. Heirs must prove moral fortitude or stability to access the full corpus. Often, inheritances are triggered by specific life events, reaching age 35, the birth of a child, or the dissolution of a detrimental marriage. Tom froze. The whiskey glass hovered halfway to his mouth. The dissolution of a detrimental marriage. It wasn't a coincidence. Rose knew. Or maybe she didn't know the specifics, but the lawyers did. By divorcing her, Tom hadn't just freed himself. He had unlocked the vault for her. He was the key. And by signing those papers so quickly, by refusing to negotiate, by waiving his right to discovery because he wanted to spare himself the headache of splitting her meager savings, he had walked away from half of a fortune. He grabbed his phone and dialed Caleb. It was 2:00 a.m. Caleb answered on the 4th ring, his voice groggy. "Tom, it's 2 in the morning. Did you kill someone? Can we reopen it?" Tom asked, his voice trembling. Reopen what? The settlement, the divorce decree. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. The sound of Caleb shifting in bed, maybe sitting up. Tom, tell me you're drunk. I saw her, Caleb. I saw Rose. She's a Sterling, Arthur Sterling's granddaughter. She has billions. Billions, Caleb. And we settled for nothing. We let her keep the car. We need to sue. We need to claim fraud. She hid assets. Caleb sighed a long, weary sound. Tom listened to me very carefully. I saw the news. I'd been awake for an hour looking at the file. And Tom's heart hammered against his ribs. We can get her right omission of material facts. No, Caleb said coldly. We can't. Why not? Tom shouted, standing up and pacing the small living room. Because of you, Tom. Remember the rush. Remember how you told me, I just want her out. I don't care about her. 401k, just get it done. You made me draft a non-discovery waiver. You signed a document stating that you were satisfied with the financial disclosures provided and that you waived any right to investigate further, to expedite the process. Tom stopped pacing. He felt the blood drain from his face. I didn't read it. I told you to read it. You were too busy booking the venue for your new wedding. Caleb said, his tone losing its professional polish. And there's more. The Sterling Trust is an inheritance. In this state, inheritance is considered separate property unless commingled. Did she ever put Sterling money into your joint checking account? No, Tom whispered. She never had any money. Then it's hers, all of it. Even if we hadn't signed the waiver, you wouldn't touch a dime of the principal. Maybe we could have argued for alimony based on lifestyle if you had stayed married, but you're the one who filed Tom. You're the one who called her dead weight. Tom sank back onto the couch. The phone felt like a lead weight in his hand. Zoe, I get nothing. You get exactly what you asked for, Tom, Caleb said, and the line went dead. Tom sat there in the dark, the blue light of the laptop illuminating his horrified face. He looked at the wedding invitation sitting on the coffee table. Thomas and Jessica. A celebration of love. It looked like a joke, a cheap, flimsy joke. He looked around the apartment he was struggling to pay for. He thought about the job he had to go to on Monday, where he would have to kiss up to a CEO who was probably worth less than Rose's weekly interest accrual. He had held a winning lottery ticket in his hand for 5 years, and he had thrown it in the trash because he didn't like the font. The weeks following the gala were a slow, grinding torture for Tom. He expected a confrontation. He expected Rose to call him and gloat. He expected a lawsuit, a public shaming, something explosive. But the punishment was worse than that. The punishment was her absolute absence. Rose didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't block him because that would imply she cared enough to press a button. She simply ascended to a plane of existence where Tom Miller did not exist. But Tom couldn't escape her. She was on the cover of Forbes. She was in the style section of the Sunday paper, attending a ribbon cutting for a new wing of the public library, the one she used to work at. She had donated $20 million to renovate it. Tom sat in the break room at his office, staring at the newspaper. Crazy, isn't it? Tom jumped. It was Dave, one of the sales guys who used to worship him. Dave was leaning against the vending machine, holding a bag of pretzels. There was no admiration in his eyes anymore, just a smirk. What? Tom folded the paper, trying to look busy. Your ex, Dave said, chewing loudly. I mean, we all thought you were the man, Tom. Trading in the librarian for the model. But turns out, you traded a winning Powerball ticket for a scratch-off that didn't pay out. Watch it, Dave, Tom snapped, standing up. "Jessica is great. We're happy." Sure, Dave laughed, walking away. "Just saying, if I had $1 billion wife, I probably wouldn't have nagged her about the electric bill. Heard about that, by the way. The guys in accounting are taking bets on how much you cried when you found out." Tom stormed out of the break room, his face burning. It was like this everywhere. The whispers, the side-eye. His authority as VP was eroding. How could anyone trust his business instincts when he had made the worst deal in personal history? His numbers started to slip. He missed a quota. He forgot a meeting. He was too busy refreshing Rose's Wikipedia page, tracking her movements. At home, the upgrade was beginning to crack. Jessica wasn't stupid. She knew the money was gone. She knew Tom was spiraling. And she was realizing that the life she signed up for the upward trajectory, the power couple status, was a mirage. "We need to cut the guest list," Tom said one evening over a dinner of takeout Thai food. "What?" Jessica dropped her fork. "We already sent the invites, Tom." "I can't afford the open bar for 300 people, Jess." Tom slammed his hand on the table. "My bonus is going to be short this quarter. The market is down." "The market isn't down, Tom. You are down," Jessica shot back. "You're obsessed with her. It's pathetic. Every time I walk into a room, I see you checking your phone to see if she's posted something." "I'm not obsessed," Tom lied. "You are. You're regretting me." Jessica's voice broke, losing its anger and revealing a sharp, jagged hurt. "You look at me and you see the mistake. You see the reason you aren't a billionaire." "That's not true," Tom said, but his voice lacked conviction. He didn't love Jessica. He realized that now. He had loved how Jessica made him look, and now she made him look like a fool. "I'm going to my mother's," Jessica said, standing up. "Jess, don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being practical. If you can't pay for the wedding, Tom, there isn't going to be one." She slammed the door. Tom didn't chase her. He sat in the silence, the smell of pad thai making him nauseous. He needed to see Rose. He convinced himself it was for closure. He convinced himself he just wanted to apologize to clear the air. But deep down, a dark, delusional part of him thought, maybe she still loves me. Maybe she's lonely in that ivory tower. Maybe I can remind her of the good times. He knew she still went to the old library on Tuesdays. It was the one habit she kept according to the article in the Chronicle. She was overseeing the renovation personally. The following Tuesday, Tom called in sick. He put on his best suit, the navy one she used to say brought out his eyes. He shaved carefully. He put on the cologne she had bought him for their 3rd anniversary. He drove to the library, parking his leased BMW next to a line of construction trucks. The building was covered in scaffolding, but the main entrance was open. He walked in his heart, thumping in his throat like a trapped bird. The lobby was empty dust sheets covering the desk where she used to sit. He walked toward the archives in the back, and there she was. She was standing by a long table covered in architectural blueprints. She was wearing a hard hat over her hair, which was pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She wore jeans, expensive tailored jeans, and a cashmere sweater. She was pointing at something on the paper, talking to a man in a suit who looked like the library director. Tom stood in the shadows of a bookshelf watching her. She looked vital, alive. When she was with him, she had always seemed faded, hunching her shoulders as if trying to take up less space. Now she stood tall. She commanded the room, not with volume, but with presence. "Rose," he said. His voice was croaky. He cleared his throat and stepped out. "Rose." She stopped talking. She turned slowly. Her expression didn't change. No shock, no fear, no joy. Just a neutral, polite recognition, as if she were looking at a vendor she didn't quite remember hiring. The library director looked at Tom, then at Rose. "Everything okay, Miss Jenkins?" "It's fine, Robert. Give us a moment," she said. Her voice was cool water. Robert nodded and walked away, leaving them alone in the dusty, sunlit room. "Tom," she said. She didn't move toward him. She kept her hands resting on the blueprints. "To what do I owe the pleasure? I assume you're not here to donate." I wanted to see you," Tom said, walking closer. He tried to smile the charm that usually worked on everyone. "I saw the news about the renovation. It's amazing, Rose, really. Thank you." "I didn't know," Tom said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "about the grandfather, about any of it." "I know you didn't," Rose said. "Why didn't you tell me?" Tom asked, the question that had been burning a hole in his brain for weeks. "We were married for 5 years. Why the secrets?" Rose finally sighed. She took off her hard hat and set it on the table. She looked at him with a gaze that was terrifyingly clear. "It wasn't a secret, Tom. It was a safety measure." "Safety from whom?" Tom looked hurt. "I was your husband." "You were a man who loved things," Rose said softly. "You loved the Rolex. You loved the title. You loved the idea of being important. My grandfather warned me. He said, 'Rose, money screams, but wealth whispers. Find a man who listens to the whisper. Find a man who loves you, not what you can give him.'" She took a step closer, but not in an inviting way, in a way that made Tom feel small. "So I tested you," she said. "I lived simply. I wanted to see if you could be happy with just us, with a normal life, with me, the librarian." "I was happy," Tom protested. "No, Tom. You were bored," Rose corrected him. "And you were cruel. You belittled my job. You mocked my clothes. You treated me like a placeholder until you found something shinier. And when you found Jessica, you didn't just leave. You bragged about it. You tried to break me on your way out to make yourself feel bigger." Tom swallowed hard. The truth of her words cut through his defenses. "I made a mistake, Rose," he said, his voice trembling. "I messed up. I see that now. I miss you. Not the money. I miss you." He reached out his hand, trying to touch her arm. Rose didn't flinch, but she stepped back out of his reach. "You don't miss me, Tom," she said, her voice devoid of pity. "You miss the opportunity I represent. You're looking at me and you're calculating how much better your life would be if you hadn't signed those papers." "That's not—" "I'm going to ask you to leave," Rose interrupted. "And I'm going to ask you not to come here again. Security is much tighter than it used to be." "Rose, please," Tom pleaded, desperation creeping in. "Can't we just grab coffee? Catch up, I'm drowning, Rose. Jessica left. I'm alone." He played the victim card. It was his last resort. He wanted her to feel sorry for him. Rose looked at him for a long, agonizing moment. For a second, Tom thought he saw a flicker of the old Rose, the soft, accommodating woman who used to make him soup when he was sick. "I'm sorry you're alone, Tom," she said. "But you built that house. Now you have to live in it." She turned her back to him and picked up the hard hat. "Robert," she called out. "I'm ready to review the East Wing now." Tom stood there frozen. She had dismissed him. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't cried. She had simply turned the page. He realized then, with a sinking horror, that he wasn't the villain in her story. He wasn't even a major character anymore. He was a footnote, a mistake she had already corrected. He turned and walked out of the library, the dust from the renovation coating his expensive Italian shoes. As he stepped out into the blinding afternoon sun, he checked his phone. A notification from the bank. Payment declined. Insufficient funds. He got into his leased BMW, gripped the steering wheel, and for the first time in years, Tom Miller cried. Not for Rose, but for himself. The corporate world smells like coffee and fear, but for Tom it used to smell like opportunity. Now the air in the gleaming glass office of Apex Solutions felt thin, like the oxygen was being slowly siphoned out. It was a Monday, 3 weeks after the confrontation at the library. Tom was sitting at his desk, staring at a spreadsheet that might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. His eyes were dry and gritty from lack of sleep. He had spent the weekend in a spiral of internet searches, reading every financial report on the Sterling Trust he could find. He learned that the trust had recently acquired a logistics firm, a firm that was a direct competitor to one of Apex's biggest clients. A dangerous, desperate idea had taken root in Tom's mind. He needed a win. He needed to prove to Richard, the CEO, that he was still the golden boy. He needed to show that his connection to Rose wasn't a liability, it was an asset. "Tom!" He snapped his head up. His assistant, a young woman named Chloe, who used to look at him with admiration, now stood in the doorway with a look of mild pity. "Richard wants to see you. Now." "Is it about the Q3 projections?" Tom asked, smoothing his tie. He realized with a jolt that his shirt was wrinkled. He hadn't sent his dry cleaning out. Jessica used to handle that. Rose used to handle that. "He didn't say," Chloe said, stepping back to let him pass. Tom walked down the hallway. He felt the eyes of the sales floor on him. The whispers didn't even stop when he passed anymore. "That's him. The guy who fumbled the bag. I heard she's buying an island. I heard he's sleeping in his car." Tom gritted his teeth, fixing a confident smile on his face as he pushed open the heavy oak doors of the CEO's office. Richard was standing by the window looking out at the skyline. He didn't turn around when Tom entered. "You wanted to see me, Richard," Tom said, sitting in one of the leather chairs without being asked. "I've got some great ideas for the Meridian account. I was thinking—" "We lost the Meridian account, Tom," Richard said. He turned around. His face was grey, his expression unreadable. "What when?" "This morning. They're moving their business to a subsidiary of Sterling Industries." The name hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "Sterling," Tom choked out. "Well, that's interesting. You know, Richard, I actually have an in there. I can make a call, smooth things over. Rose and I are still close." It was a lie so bold, so pathetic, that the room seemed to silence itself in embarrassment. Richard stared at him. He walked over to his desk and picked up a tablet. "You're lying, Tom." "I'm not. We had a rocky patch, sure, but—" "Stop," Richard commanded. "We received a legal notice from the Sterling Trust's legal department this morning. It's a cease and desist." Tom felt his stomach drop through the floor. "A what?" "Apparently you've been implying to several of our vendors that you have influence with the Sterling board to secure better rates," Richard read from the screen. "They are threatening to sue Apex for misrepresentation and corporate espionage if you do not cease these claims immediately." Tom's mouth opened and closed. He had made a few comments at a bar. He had hinted to a supplier that he could pull strings. He didn't think it would get back to her. "She's vindictive," Tom stammered. "She's doing this to hurt me." "She is protecting her brand, Tom. Something you used to be good at," Richard said, tossing the tablet onto the desk. "You're a liability. Our clients are laughing at us. They see you and they see a man with poor judgment. A man who couldn't spot value when it was sleeping in his own bed. If you missed that, how can I trust you to spot market trends? Richard, I've given this company 10 years, and we paid you well for them, but you're done. You're firing me." Tom stood up, his legs shaking. "You can't do that." "My numbers." "Your numbers have been in the toilet for 2 months. You're distracted. You're toxic. Pack your things, Tom. Security will escort you out in 10 minutes. Tom walked out of the office in a daze. The walk back to his desk felt like a funeral procession. He grabbed a cardboard box. He put in his stapler, a framed photo of himself on a golf course, his coffee mug that said, "World's Best Closer." He left the photo of Jessica in the drawer. As he walked through the lobby, holding his box, he saw Dave by the water cooler. Dave didn't look away this time. He just shook his head, a small, cruel smirk playing on his lips. Tom pushed through the revolving doors and out onto the sidewalk. It had started to rain, a cold grey drizzle that soaked through his suit instantly. He stood there, jobless, wifeless, and humiliated, clutching a box of junk. His phone buzzed. It was a text from his landlord. "Rent is past due. If not paid by Friday, we begin eviction proceedings." Tom looked up at the skyscrapers. Somewhere up there in a penthouse that touched the clouds, Rose was probably drinking tea and approving multi-million-dollar mergers. "It's not fair," he hissed at the rain. "It's not fair." Desperation has a specific taste. To Tom, it tasted like stale whiskey and the metallic tang of fear. A week after being fired, the walls of his apartment were closing in. He had sold the furniture. The white leather sectional went for a fraction of what he paid. The espresso machine Jessica had demanded sold for $200 on Marketplace. But it wasn't enough. The lease breaking fee, the credit card debt from the wedding deposits that were non-refundable. The mountain was too high. He sat on the floor of his living room, staring at the Submariner Rolex. It was the symbol, the totem. When he bought it, he had felt like he had arrived. It was heavy, Swiss-engineered, perfect. It told the world that Tom Miller was a man of substance. Now it was just a chunk of steel that could buy him another month of survival. He put on a hoodie and a baseball cap, pulling the brim low. He didn't want to be recognized. He took the subway he had returned the BMW the day after he was fired to a part of the city he used to joke about. The pawn shop was called Gold and Glory. It had bars on the windows and smelled of dust and unwashed clothes. The man behind the counter was heavy-set with grease under his fingernails. He didn't look up when Tom walked in. "Help you." Tom unclasped the watch and laid it on the glass counter. It gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, looking pitifully out of place among the cheap engagement rings and power drills. "Rolex Submariner, authentic, box and papers," Tom said, his voice flat. The man picked it up, screwing a jeweler's loop into his eye. He examined it in silence for a long minute. $5,000, the man grunted. "5," Tom scoffed. "I paid 14 for it 6 months ago. It's brand new. It's used. Market soft. $5,000. Take it or leave it." Tom looked at the watch. He remembered the day he bought it. He had come home and shown it to Rose. She had smiled that small, patient smile and said, "It's very shiny, Tom. If you like it, I'm happy for you." He had thought she was jealous. He realized now she was just indifferent. She could have bought the Rolex factory. "I need at least 8, Tom pleaded. 5-5, final offer." Tom's hand hovered over the watch. He wanted to snatch it back. He wanted to scream. But the eviction notice was burning a hole in his pocket. "Fine," he whispered. He took the cash, a stack of $100 bills that felt dirty in his hands, and walked out. He felt lighter, but in a terrible way. Like he had lost a limb. He went to a dive bar next door to count the money. He ordered a cheap beer. On the TV above the bar, the local news was playing. And in business news, the Sterling Trust has announced a new scholarship fund for underprivileged students, spearheaded by the reclusive heiress, Rose Jenkins Sterling. Tom stared at the screen. Rose was cutting a ribbon. She was smiling a real, genuine smile he hadn't seen in years. She looked like an angel. The bartender wiped down the counter in front of Tom. "Some luck, huh? Imagine being that lucky." "It's not luck," Tom muttered, slamming his beer down. "It's a lie." The bartender looked at him. "Say what?" "She's a fraud," Tom said louder. The alcohol on an empty stomach was hitting him fast. "She plays the saint, but she ruined a man's life to get there." "You know her," the bartender laughed. "I was married to her," Tom shouted. The few patrons in the bar turned to look. "I'm the husband, the one she discarded." A man sitting in a booth near the back stood up. He was wearing a trench coat and had a face that looked like it had been crumpled up and smoothed back out. He walked over to Tom, holding a business card. "You're Tom Miller?" the man asked. His voice was oily. "Yeah. Who's asking?" "Eddie Brockman, the City Ledger," the man said, sliding the card across the sticky bar top. The City Ledger was a tabloid, a rag known for alien abductions and celebrity scandals. "I couldn't help but overhear," Eddie said, smiling, revealing nicotine-stained teeth. "You say the heiress ruined your life, that she deceived you." Tom looked at the card, then at Eddie. A normal person would have run. A sane person would have known that talking to a tabloid was the final nail in the coffin of his reputation. But Tom wasn't sane anymore. He was angry, he was broke, and he wanted to hurt her. He wanted to shatter that perfect image on the TV screen. "She lied by omission," Tom said, his eyes narrowing. "She trapped me into a divorce settlement without disclosing assets. She played me for a fool." "That sounds like a story," Eddie said, pulling out a voice recorder. "A story the public deserves to hear. The poor husband and the billionaire shark. We pay for exclusives, Tom. Good money." "How much?" Tom asked. "Enough to get you out of this hole," Eddie promised. "Tell me everything. Tell me about the poverty mindset. Tell me how she refused to support your dreams. We'll paint a picture, Tom. We'll make you the victim." Tom looked at the recorder. The red light blinked, waiting. He thought about Caleb's warning. "You have no legal standing." He thought about the security guard at the gala. "Escort him out." He thought about Rose's cool, dismissive eyes in the library. "You're a footnote." He grabbed the beer, downed it, and looked Eddie in the eye. "Turn it on," Tom said. "I'll tell you everything." For the next 2 hours, Tom poured poison into the microphone. He twisted every memory. Rose's frugality became financial abuse. Her quietness became emotional withholding. He painted himself as the supportive husband who was blindsided by a woman playing a cruel psychological game. He didn't mention Jessica. He didn't mention the upgrade. He just talked about his own suffering. When he left the bar, Eddie handed him an envelope with $5,000 cash in advance. "This runs Sunday," Eddie said, shaking Tom's hand. "It's going to be explosive." Tom walked out into the night, clutching the envelope. He felt a surge of dark triumph. He might have lost the money, the job, and the girl, but he still had a voice. He was going to burn her down. He didn't realize that in the world of high stakes, PR, a tabloid story isn't a weapon. It's a trap, and he had just stepped right into the center of it. Sunday morning arrived with the force of a hurricane. Tom stood on the corner of 42nd Street, staring at the newsstand. There, plastered on the front page of the City Ledger, was his face. It was a grainy photo from his wedding day, with Rose ripped down the middle. The headline screamed, "The billionaire trap ex-husband claims sterling heiress faked poverty to ruin him." Tom felt a surge of adrenaline. He bought 5 copies. He stood on the sidewalk, reading his own words, twisted slightly by Eddie, but effective. He sounded like a martyr. He sounded like a man wronged by the elite. This is it, he thought. Now the world sees her. He went back to his empty apartment, waiting for the vindication to roll in. He expected interview requests. He expected Rose to call, begging him to stop. But by noon, the tide didn't just turn, it evaporated. The internet, a beast Tom thought he could tame, woke up. And it was hungry for the truth. Within hours of the article going live, internet sleuths had dug up Tom's old social media accounts. They found the posts from 3 months ago, the photos of the new Rolex, the pictures of Jessica on the boat, the caption, "Out with the old, in with the gold. Upgrade season." They found the timeline. At Truthseeker, 99 tweeted, "Wait, this guy is crying that she hid money, but he dumped her for a 26-year-old model 3 days after the funeral. He called his ex dead weight on Facebook in May. Hashtag Team Rose at Financer." BroX posted a video analysis. Tom Miller waived discovery. He signed a document saying he didn't care about her assets because he wanted a quick divorce to remarry. He's not a victim. He's the guy who threw away a winning lottery ticket because he wanted a shiny quarter. The narrative flipped so fast, Tom got whiplash. He wasn't the poor husband. He was the fumbled the bag guy. He became a meme. His face, looking smug at the gala, was plastered over images of clowns. Then came the final blow. At 2:00 p.m. a notification popped up on his phone. It wasn't a text from Rose. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a press release from the Sterling Trust posted to their official social media channels. It was devastatingly short. Regarding the recent tabloid allegations made by Thomas Miller, the Sterling Trust confirms that Mr. Miller initiated divorce proceedings immediately following the passing of Arthur Sterling. Mr. Miller declined all offers of spousal support and expedited the separation to pursue other interests. Miss Jenkins Sterling wishes him peace and privacy as he navigates his new path. It was the peace and privacy that killed him. It was a dismissal. She wasn't angry. She wasn't hurt. She was pitying him publicly. Tom checked his bank account. The $5,000 from Eddie was there. It was enough to pay rent for 2 months. After that, nothing. He tried to call Eddie. "We need to do a follow-up. I can explain the tweets. Lose my number, Tom." Eddie said, his voice cold. "The story's dead. You're radioactive. Even the tabloids have standards against guys who look this pathetic." 6 months later. The library renovation was complete. It was a beautiful glass-walled structure that glowed in the evening light. A black town car pulled up to the curb. Rose stepped out. She looked happy. She was holding hands with a man, an architect, someone with kind eyes, and a jacket that looked well worn. They weren't looking at cameras. They were laughing at a private joke. Across the street, inside a crowded coffee shop, a man in a green apron was wiping down tables. He looked older than his years. His hair was thinning, and he looked tired. "Hey, Tom. Table 4 needs sugar," the manager shouted. Tom Miller looked up. He looked through the window. He saw Rose stop, fix the architect's collar, and smile a smile of pure, unburdened contentment. He looked down at the rag in his hand. He looked at the tip jar, which held $3. "On it," Tom whispered. He turned his back on the window, and for the first time in his life, he finally stopped counting what he had lost and started realizing what he had never really possessed. Tom spent his life chasing the appearance of wealth, only to realize too late that true value isn't something you wear on your wrist, it's something you carry in your character. He thought he was upgrading, but he was really just revealing his own shallowness. Rose didn't destroy Tom. She didn't need to. She simply let him be himself, and that was enough to ruin him. In the end, silence was her loudest weapon. She proved that while money screams, wealth whispers, and integrity doesn't need to say a word. What do you think was Tom's biggest mistake? Was it the affair, the bragging, or the interview with the tabloid? And would you have told your partner about the billions? Or would you have tested them like Rose did? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.